Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to this walkthrough, the Illusori Tarot. Now there is no information on this box, so I'm not sure I remember the name of the artist off the top of my head, but this is a deck that you can find on Etsy. This was a deck that I featured actually in my last Say Yes to the Deck video, which if I remember I will link up in the cards, and I will also link the video where I hauled a bunch of decks that, even though I didn't pick this for my Say Yes to the Deck, a very generous subscriber had reached out and sent this to me as a gift, which was really kind of her, and I'm excited to share it with you guys. This is one that really caught my attention as soon as I saw it. I haven't seen a lot of videos about it on YouTube, and I just think it's really unique, and there's something about it that really caught my eye. I'm gonna take you through this deck with me. Just to start here, it comes in a pretty standard tuck box. This is not the kind of tuck box that looks like it's gonna hold up very well. I'm probably going to be transferring these cards into a peggy bag ASAP because this doesn't feel sturdy. But I think it's really interesting that the tuck box has not one word on it anywhere. Like, if you don't know what this deck, it says tarot here, and it has 27 for some reason there, but there is no identifying language anywhere on it. I don't even think on the inner flap or anything. No, like nope, there's nothing. So if you don't know this is the Illusori Tarot, you're in trouble because there's nothing there to tell you what it is. I thought maybe it had even said it above here, but nope. Now the art style here, it literally looks like this deck was colored with colored pencil. In some spots it almost looks like crayon. I don't know if you can see that down like here on the blue. You can see that sort of grainy texture almost of like coloring on watercolor paper or something, or like even just coloring with a crayon, so it's less smooth. You can also see it up here in sort of the pink. And that style of art, just, I don't know, there's something about it that just really caught my attention when I was first looking at this deck. I will say this is very like standard cardstock, like from any deck from like the 90s. So fairly thin, but it'll probably hold up really nicely. This kind of cardstock tends to hold up pretty well. So maybe 300 GSM, maybe 280. I don't know what was standard back then. Semi-gloss, so it's not like Oracle card glossy. Pretty standard sizing, I think. Let's see. I have this is a Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial, which I think is pretty standard, maybe slightly wide. Yeah, it's the same exact size. Yeah, so this is standard, and this is standard. The backs, as you can see, are really interesting. There's almost this like 80s or 90s. It makes me think of Rubik's Cube. Let's just say that. I don't know who this character is in the center. And I'm guessing this is the artist's signature, sort of built in that spot at the top of the head there. I'm not sure. But in any case, we're going to dive in. These are not borderless, but the border is very thin and white. And I do believe with a deck that's this colorful and this busy, it sort of needs that border just to contain it. I don't know that I would trim this deck ever, but I'm really excited to have it. So let's zoom in. We're going to take a look at the imagery. There is no guidebook that I'm aware of. Oh, actually, that's not true. I believe if you go onto the Etsy shop, you can buy a guidebook for this deck, and I may actually end up doing that just because I think this is what I'm going to really like. So I'm going to zoom us in. Now, one complaint I've heard or considered for myself actually when I was going through this for my Say Yes to the Deck video is that I don't believe there's keywords on every single card. I also do believe that there is quite a bit of Thoth influence in this deck. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that's what I noticed the first time. And yeah, so let's dive in. The Fool, I love this, I have to say. So when you first look here, there's all these sort of faces and masks and like identities of people and all these like sort of features you see here. Like there's some lips, an eye, some more lips. It's almost like you're a blank slate, and really that's exactly what the Fool energy is. You get this idea of like, okay, there's all these sort of features and you can sort of create yourself. There's an opportunity to start fresh, and I love that. Here's our Magician, and the keyword here is existence. Now, it kind of reminds me of that idea of like manifesting and creating the life that you want to create. Do we see all of the symbols for the suits? Not necessarily, but then again, I don't know how this deck is showing the suits. But again, you can see that sort of colored pencil style of fill-in here. There's some shading and such, but there's definitely that colored pencil feel. There's something about this that I just really love. And I love all the bright colors. There's also a bit of a carnival feel to this deck as well. inner voice for the High Priestess. I think this works so well. We see this sort of expanding third eye with all these different layers to it. I think that's beautiful. Creativity for the Empress. I think this really works. Now this sort of harkens back a bit to my experience with the Osho Zen Tarot. I believe also creativity was potentially a keyword for the Empress card in that deck. I may be remembering that wrong, but that comes to mind. I think creativity really works for the Empress, particularly when we think of her as being associated with that sort of sacral chakra and that place where our passions reside, and 3 being the number of growth and creativity, for sure. The Emperor, I love this a lot, actually. When I first saw this, I wasn't sure, but we get this idea with the background of all of the structure of his domain. And then there's this sort of seat of his power, or the, what he holds. And what I love about this is that inside this sort of crystal that we could say is at the top of this staff with this crown here is a lotus, a sun, and a moon. And you get this idea of ruling from a place of inner harmony, inner peace, and balance. And I really like that. I think if you like looking into imagery and kind of just having things to kind of glom onto to really spark your intuition, you'll really enjoy this card. Here we have the Hierophant. I think this works for me. There's still some overbearing energy here with these giant wings. My dog is like a cat. She's like in or out. She can't decide. Do you want to be in or out, baby? Do you know? No, she doesn't know. So here we have, again, there's sort of this lotus symbology up here at the third eye. And so we can look at this in its light aspect as sort of that spiritual authority or spiritual wisdom. But there's also enough here with the wings that I could see that overbearing energy that I sometimes get with the Hierophant as well. The Lovers, and we have choice. So a little bit of Marseille influence there, perhaps a little more traditional with the idea of choice, as opposed to looking at this in terms of simply love. We also have some really cool symbology here. I don't know how much of this is intentional, but we have sort of a diamond with a crown at his third eye, and just sort of a crown over like a little sort of opened third eye here at her, on her forehead. I just feel like there's a lot you could just look at here. I like that the heart is sort of upside down. That's something you could play with. It almost looks like there's this sort of Venn diagram happening of where their lives are intertwining here, so you could look at this that way as well. I'm not familiar enough with sacred geometry to know how these symbols here might, you know, what they might mean, besides to look at them my own way, which is to see the alchemical symbol for fire and the alchemical symbol for water sort of overlapping there. The Chariot. I freaking love this card. So we have the Om symbol here and this sort of thunderbolt and these two fists coming together, and I get this feeling of like sort of creating this idea of drive or of will, of force, and moving forward. It feels very powerful to me, very centered and very focused, which I absolutely love. The Strength card. I love that she is here just super peaceful, literally with her face in the jaw of this lion. And the lemniscate is everywhere in this card. It's just absolutely everywhere. I think that's a really cool image. The Hermit. We get very search, it says. I think that's a really brilliant keyword. Did this one have a keyword? I can't remember. No, there was no keyword for strength. And this is what I mean. Some of the cards will have keywords and some won't. But weirdly, I haven't found myself obviously missing when there wasn't a keyword. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the ones that have keywords are helpful, but the ones that don't, I don't need them. Here we get this idea of sort of being centered, and the search definitely seems to be within. I think it's interesting that there's all these sort of arrows pointing inward, and it's like this reminder that the search is to go within. It's not about searching outside of yourself. It reminds me of a quote from, the call, what's it called? The Call of the Goddess? Oh my gosh. Take my witch card away. And the line goes, if that which you seek you find not within yourself, you will never find it without. That's what this makes me think of. The Wheel of Fortune. I think this is really good. I like a little bit of chaos sometimes in a Wheel of Fortune, this idea of all this stuff that's happening and spinning around you, and you have to decide where you're going to be in relation to that change. I think that's really good. I believe this is one of the letters from the Kabbalah. I forget what the word is for that. Or a Hebrew letter, maybe? But I don't know it, so I can't, it won't necessarily assist me in my reading at this point, but might be notable for some of you. Justice. I find it interesting because I have not been drawn to any carnival feeling decks, but this one has a bit of a carnival feel, without feeling circusy. I don't know how else to describe it. Here we have the keyword balance for justice, and I think this is really interesting. We have what appears to be a feather here, and this face. I'm not sure what I think of this card. This is the first one that I'm like, I don't know if anything's really jumping out at me besides perhaps the feather here. I do think perhaps with all these ribbons coming out, we have this idea of every action having a consequence or having an effect, right? All the sort of threads we've thrown out into the world, and how are they going to come back to us? So I could go there with it. The Hanged Man, and Justice was in position 11, it looks like. Oh, I ordered these. These actually aren't numbered, so you could work with either numbering system. So the Hanged Man, New Vision. Again, this is a word that reminds me of, I'm pretty sure New Vision was one of the keywords from the Osho Zen Tarot, so it's making me think of that. But we're definitely looking at perspective here, a shift in perspective, which is perfect for me for the Hanged Man. There's also a bit of a feeling of cocooning happening here, or like we can get that idea of sort of the butterfly waiting to emerge, so that's really cool. The Death, Transformation. The death here seems, again, there's I believe another Hebrew letter there. If anybody knows, feel free to chime in the comments down below, because again, I'm not as familiar with those. But here we have like a face of death that seems to be very much embedded in like plant life. I feel like there's a very leafy aspect to that face. But I'm good with the keyword transformation. That works for me. The Temperance, Art. Now, this is one of the cards that made me think there's some Thoth influence here, because as I recall, art is the keyword for temperance in the Thoth deck. We have this sort of feeling of almost of Hermes, I believe, here with the wings on the feet, or Nike. I'm not sure. I'm not great with all of the symbology here, but I like that we have this up arrow and this down arrow, and these feet seem to be balancing on a balance beam. So there's this idea of sort of treading that line of moderation for sure. The Devil. Interesting. You get this feeling of this overbearing, almost dragon-like energy behind and sort of containing, and this sort of teeth or this jaw around her, and she's blinded. Again, is that a Hebrew letter? I'm not sure. Very cool. Very cool, though. I freaking love this Tower card. It just says break. But I cannot see this card without thinking of Breakthrough, which is, again, reminds me of the Osho Zen Tarot. It makes me almost want to do a side-by-side with the Osho Zen Tarot in this deck, just out of curiosity, to see if the parallels are only in my imagination and memory, or if they're really there. But I love this idea of this upward moving energy from within that bursts the tower open. It reminds me of advice I've sometimes given to clients when I've seen the tower come up representative of a piece of advice to them to break down what is no longer serving them, to really to create their own tower moment on purpose. Really powerful. The Star. Hope. I love the little hearts here and the stars. Again, another Hebrew letter. I'm pretty sure that's what those are at this point. It might be really interesting to dive into this deck after I've studied Thoth a bit, because I do feel like I'd find more correlations. But I do think it's beautiful all on its own. The Moon and Past Lives. And there's another Hebrew letter there, or there, both, I believe. This is really, really cool. I like this idea of sort of exploring the effect of reincarnation. We have the moon phases here, but also looking at sort of the lifelong patterns and taking a peek at those. The Sun. I'm not sure what I think of this one. Innocence is a wonderful word for the sun, I believe. I think of the creepy baby, we often say, the creepy baby, the naked baby on the horse. But actually, to me, the sun card really represents that vulnerability and that innocence. So that actually really works for me. Resurrection for Judgment, I think, is a beautiful keyword. I love the butterfly symbology that's center stage on this card. The World. I love this idea that the world is contained within what looks like this tiny little kernel, and this idea that it's you can have that sense of completion, but sometimes it's not big. Sometimes those completed moments are actually quite small. So here we're into the wands, and we have Source for the Ace of Wands. So this is the symbol for wands, it looks like. And I believe that symbol is on the box here. So it'll be interesting to see if these other symbols are the other suits. I'm guessing they are. So I'm guessing this is Pentacles. Not sure which one would be Swords and which one would be Cups. I guess we'll find out. But there's our Ace of Wands. I love that there's a little spark like a little mini flame right there as well. And you get the idea of that spark. This also looks like it could be the heater of a hot air balloon, which is kind of a cool visual. Possibilities in the Two of Wands. I think that's a fantastic card. Keyword for that card. It's my own personal keyword for the Two of Wands is something very similar. Virtue for the Three of Wands. Virtue I struggle with a little bit here because I definitely see the Three of Wands that moment when you're just starting to, things are just starting to take shape. And you see that in the imagery. Virtue is a keyword I'm not as familiar with. Again, I think that's a Thoth keyword. Completing for Four of Wands. That works. I like to see the Four of Wands as a milestone card. Strife for the Five of Wands. Again, I think that's Thoth. And that definitely works. Victory for the Six of Wands, of course, works. Valor for the Seven of Wands also works. And we get this one fist against all of these hands. So you definitely get that traditional Rider-Waite-Smith feel too, if that's what you're looking for. Swiftness for the Eight of Wands works. And we get this almost like a fan blade that's going really quickly. It looks like it's actually a clock, which is really interesting. 10, 11, 12. Yep, that's a clock. Very cool. Strength for the Nine of Wands, which I love. I think that really, really works. We're sort of holding the line there. Oppression for the Ten of Wands. Again, I think that's a Thoth keyword. I don't know if these are all Thoth. If you're familiar with Thoth and you're seeing a ton of Thoth here, I would really be excited to hear your feedback down below on what you think of this deck. Capabilities for the Page of Wands. I think that really works. Intensity definitely works for our Knight of Wands. Queen of Wands has no keyword, and I wish she did, but we definitely see her passion and her confidence in this card. And Creator for the King of Wands. That also works, and I think that's also a Osho Zen keyword. It kind of makes me curious how much of Osho Zen has Thoth influence as well, actually, the more that I look at this deck. But I really love this. I think that works for the King of Wands. So now we're into cups. So cups are this triangle-y thing. So yes, there it is there. So cups and wands. Okay. So we have gift for the Ace of Cups. I think that's perfect. Love for the Two of Cups. I love the yin yang here. That is so perfect to me. That's exactly the kind of energy I want to see in a Two of Cups. That harmony and balance. Celebration for the Three of Cups. I love these like mouths, and you get the idea of sort of happy conversation and connection. Turning in for the Four of Cups. Again, that may be a keyword from Osho Zen. I kind of really want to do a side-by-side now. But I think that's great for the Four of Cups. Disappointment for the Five of Cups. Also great. You get the idea that some of these have had to fly away. They've all got wings. And so there's this whole if you love it, let it go sort of energy happening here, which I really like. Dream for the Six of Cups. Yeah, I really want to do a side-by-side with Thoth now. This has to have had, or not Thoth, excuse me, with Osho Zen Tarot. I do think there's some influence there, which might be one of the reasons I was so drawn to this deck. Projections for the Seven of Cups. I think that's also a keyword from Osho Zen. I think it's really brilliant for the Seven of Cups, actually, because a lot of times we're seeing what we want to see in that card. Letting go for the Eight of Cups is brilliant. Again, I think that matches up with Osho Zen. I'm having just so many feels about that now. Happiness for the Nine of Cups is so great. I love this. Harmony for the Ten of Cups. Understanding for the Page. Trust for the Knight. Receptivity for the Queen. Healing for the King. I might just get out my Osho Zen right after this and film it. I don't know when it'll go up, but I'm really tempted. Consciousness for the Ace of Swords. So here's our swords, and there is that symbol there on the box. So yes, the suit symbols are definitely on the box, which is great. So consciousness for the Ace of Swords really works. Decision for the Two also works. Contrast for the Three. Yes. Postponement for the Four. This has to match up with Osho Zen. Okay, I'm living for this, actually. Defeat for the Five. Discovery for the Six of Swords. That's really interesting when we think of moving away from the bad. We don't always think of what we're heading to, and I think that's really brilliant. Trick for the Seven. Good keyword. Barriers for the Eight of Swords. Look at how hemmed in this feels and squished. It really works. Sorrow for the Nine of Swords. Ruin for the Ten of Swords. Conflict for the Page. Fighting for the Knight. Yeah, I think that matches up with Osho Zen. Intelligence for the Queen. That one's different. Control for the King. That one I think might match up. Whew. Okay, I know I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole because I'm imagining my Osho Zen now. Let's look at the Ace of Pentacles. There's no keyword on this one. No. Change for the 2. Work for the 3. That definitely works for me. Miser for the 4. Worry for the 5. Success for the 6. Patience for the 7. Prudence for the 8. I think that's a good word there. Gain for the 9. Wealth for the 10. Adventure for the Page of Pentacles. That's interesting. I don't normally think of him as my adventure or my adventurous court card. I would tend to see Page of Wands more in that space. Page of Pentacles I tend to think as being resourceful, being really into like making his own way, but not so much adventure. Meditation for the Knight. A much calmer Knight of Pentacles rather. Oh no, I guess that makes sense for Pentacles. I had swords in my head. Maybe it was his look here. Meditation works for the Knight of Pentacles. He's very thoughtful with his careful, cautious. Flowering for the Queen of Pentacles. This is another one that feels Osho Zen to me. And abundance for the King of Pentacles. Oh, so cool. Okay, I might actually just do a quick little side-by-side of Osho Zen. I'm going to like hold this video. I'm going to do a quick little comparison and I'll be right back and I'm going to share with you my thoughts on that. Okay, so we're going to do this pretty quickly, but I want to do a very quick side-by-side and I'm just going to note where these are the same. So here we have Osho Zen Tarot here and the Illusori Tarot here. So we have our Fool. These are obviously different. Existence, these match up keyword-wise. Inner Voice, they match. Ooh, let's just bring the matchy and the not matchy. Okay, so these match. Creativity is a match. This explains why these were so familiar and comfortable for me, because this was my first deck. The Emperor, we have the Rebel. These do not match. The Hierophant and Nothingness, these do not match. The Lovers and Choice, these don't match. Awareness and the Chariot, they don't match. Oops. Strength and Courage, they don't match. Search and Aloneness don't match. Change and Wheel of Fortune don't match. Maybe there's not as many as I thought. We have Breakthrough and Justice. Balance. So this is interesting. So here we have Justice for, yeah, okay. So those are different. New Vision, the same for the Hanged Man. I thought so. So those are the same. Transformation is the same. Art and Integration. These have a very similar feel, but I'm not going to say they're the same. So I'm going to take them apart here. Conditioning and the Devil. These are different. Thunderbolt and Breakthrough. I do think these have a very similar feel, but they are different keywords. Silence and Hope for the Star. Different. Past Lives, the same for the Moon. I thought that was really cool to see those. Innocence, yes, for the Sun is the same. Beyond Illusion and Resurrection, these are different. The World and Completion are different. Okay, so Ace of Wands, Source, these are the same. Two of Wands, Possibilities are the same. Virtue and Experiencing are different. Participation and Completion are different. Oops. Totality and Strife. Success and Victory, these are different. Stress and Valor are different. Are we still on the Seven of Wands? Seven of Wands, yes, okay. Traveling and Swiftness are different. Exhaustion and Strength are different. Suppression and Oppression. I'm going to call these the same. I'm just going to make sure I have room here. It's neat in my piles. Capabilities and Playfulness are different for our Page of Wands. Yeah. Intensity is the same for our Knight of Wands. Look at the colors too here. Queen of Wands, we have sharing. These are different though. The Creator is the same for the King of Wands. Going with the flow is the Ace here. These are different. Love and friendliness, these are different. But the feeling is very the same. But you can say that about lots. Celebration is the same keyword. Turning in, same keyword. Clinging to the past and disappointment are different. The Dream, yes, these are the same. Projections, I was right. Letting go, the same. Happiness and laziness, these again have a similar feel, but they are different. Harmony is the same for the 10 of Cups, which I love. Understanding and trust for the Page. Oh wait, I've got my pages and my knights mixed up. So these are the same. And these are the same. So I'm just going to quickly check my other quartz to see if I made that mistake. So where's our Page of Wands? Because I would have had these backwards. So Page of, oh, so we have capabilities and Queen. Okay, those didn't match up anyway. But that does mean that I have my quartz backwards. I don't have titles on these, so, and I've had this deck for like a very long time. So these are actually this way. Right and then left. Same thing in rainbows. I'm just fixing these so that we don't run into that again. Right and then left. Okay, all right. I think we're going to match up a lot. So receptivity here for the Queen is a match. Oops. Healing for the King is a match. Hopefully these are staying in frame. I'm trying to do this quickly. Consciousness for the Ace of Swords is a match. Now this was always a tricky keyword in the Osho Zen Tarot, schizophrenia, but when you read the book, it is about decision. These are definitely the same, but I'm gonna keep them separate because the keywords are different. But I do understand that there's some correlation there. So isolation and contrast for the Three of Swords, these are definitely different. Postponement, I knew this one was going to be the same for the Four of Swords. Comparison and defeat, these are different. The burden and discovery, these are different. Trick and politics, different. Guilt and barriers are different. Oops. Sorrow, oops, did I have these? Yeah, these are okay. So sorrow is the same for the Nine of Swords. Rebirth and ruin, these are different. Conflict and mind for the Page, these are different. But fighting for the Knight is the same. Morality for the Queen, these are different. Control for the King. I knew this one was going to be the same. So here we're into the Ace of Pentacles. We don't have a keyword here, so there's no way to check that, but there we go. Moment to moment, these are different. Oops. Guidance and work for the Three of Pentacles. Miser and the Miser, these are the same. The Outsider and worry, these are different. Compromise and success are different. Patience is the same. Ordinariness and prudence are different. Ripeness and gain are different. We are the world and wealth are different. But adventure is the same in the Page. Slowing down and meditation for the Knight. These have a similar feel, but they are different. Flowering, I knew this one was the same. And abundance. Okay, so here's where we're looking. Let me zoom us out here so you can see what the piles look like. So there is less, let's just see so you can see how much of the deck here. So I would say about 1/3 of the deck matches up with Osho Zen, and the other 2/3 does not. But it's interesting to me because I feel like a lot of the cards that, so these are the ones that were the same as Osho Zen. So Existence, High Priestess, Existence for the Magician, Inner Voice for the High Priestess, Creativity for the Empress, New Vision for the Hanged Man. So these are all the same as the Osho Zen, same keywords, which I think is really, really interesting. The ones that they went a different way, though, a lot of these went a different way. They went a little more traditional, either into Thoth or Rider-Waite-Smith, I guess, depending on your perspective. And I think a lot of these sort of cleaned up some of the cards that could be a little bit more problematic or a little bit trickier or a little bit too biased in the Osho Zen, because the Osho Zen does take a very specific take on the tarot, and I think these cards that they change does bring in a little bit more neutrality and a little bit more or better alignment with the Rider-Waite-Smith. So I think that's really, really interesting. But I think it's really cool that there is this correlation because, of course, I've worked with this deck for years and years and years. It's again, it was my very, very first tarot deck. So to see that there's a bunch of overlap between the two is really kind of exciting to me personally. So I am super curious to hear what your thoughts are on the Illusori Tarot. Let me know down below. I would love to hear if you've ever seen this deck. Have you heard about it? Do you have any opinions about it? What do you think? Is this one that you would pick up? Would you add it to your wish list? Do you think you'd enjoy working with it? What do you think about the keywords? What do you think about the overlap with Osho Zen Tarot? What do you think about whether this is Thoth inspired or Rider-Waite-Smith? Like, what are your thoughts? I'm super curious, but I'm actually pretty excited to play with this. I do think I might consider picking up the guidebook for this deck. I think it might make it a lot of fun to play with and give me sort of some deeper insights, but beyond that, I am really excited to get to know it a little bit better. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!